What's up, guys? All right, this video has been a long time coming, I know. The previous video of me doing the unboxing, which you can check out right here in this little icon, or you can check it out in the description below. I went through the unboxing and the assembly process for this Axiom Pro Plus 8 that I purchased in December. I said I was going to do a review of it. I wanted to give myself a bit of time before I made that review, so I feel like it's almost a year now and I've been able to put the machine through its paces and get a lot of work done. So I'm pretty comfortable with the machine, and to give you my honest thoughts about it. I purchased this machine myself, my own money, my own hard-working dollars. When I purchased this machine, they included the toolbox, so your arrangement, your price might be different. In the end, I spent about $8,700 on this machine. It's kind of puts a pit in my stomach just saying that. But I'm going to tell you why I purchased this and what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and who I think this machine is for. Before we move into that, I want to give a little background on my experience with CNC machines and how I use the CNC machine. So I've used the larger, not necessarily commercial or industrial version of CNC machines. I've used a 4x8 CNC machine back in college when I went to architecture school. We had a wood shop in there, and they had like pretty much all the tools that you can think of, and it was a really nice shop. They had this really big 4x8. I forgot what the model was. I think it was a Cam Master. I don't remember. It's been like about 10 years already. So I've used a really large machine that had, auto tool changers and everything like that, which was really, really nice. That thing just cut like butter. You could put anything on that and it would just run it out really quick. And then I also used the more entry-level machines, which I'll go into that later on. I've used the Shapeoko, which I feel is like an entry-level type of machine. It's a really nice machine. You can get a lot of stuff done in that machine, but I feel like it is more of the entry-level machines, CNC machines that is out there. Not saying that that's anything bad. Just saying that it's just a little bit more entry level. Most of the work that I typically do on the CNC before in college, it was more about like creating topographic layers, just creating contour lines and having the machine cut it out. And also a little bit of 3D, work as well, creating, a 3D landscape using 3D contours and parallel passes and things like that. So that's the extent of what I use the machine for. Currently what I use my CNC for is a lot of production-based items. I produce a lot of catch-all trays, valley trays, and I do it on this machine. I design it on the software and the machine cuts it out. It's nice and clean, I like it. And it's really quick too, especially like doing these complicated contours that you can't really do by hand. This machine really works nicely in those situations. So that gives you a background as to how I'm approaching this review and the general experience of my use of CNCs. So let's get into this. If you want to know the technical information, you can always look it up on Axiom's website. This specific model, they don't have it available anymore. This is the Pro Plus 8 model. Right now they have the V5, I believe, which is an update of this model here. And it's kind of sad because when I purchased this, they did have the sale, which was amazing, but like 2 months later, they updated it, which it's fine. I have no issues with this, and the updates on that machine isn't really substantial that makes this anything less of a great machine. It does come in different size bed lengths and different cut capacities. They offer the 24x24, the 24x36, as well as the 24x48. This model here is the 24x48. So that means the cut capacity on this machine here is 24 in the X direction and then 48 inches in the Y direction. The Z axis travel is less than 6 inches. I think it's like 5.9 inches. There's plenty of Z direction for what I need to get done. I did have one situation where I wished I had a little bit taller of a little bit higher of a Z travel, but it wasn't that big of an issue. The total footprint, if you're considering buying this model here or the newer one, the total footprint is, I believe, 33 inches wide by 63 inches long. Actually, let me just get a measuring tape. So the actual footprint, if you're buying the base, if you're making your base, then it's a different situation. But if you're buying the base from Axiom, the footprint is 34 wide by 63 inches. Height of the base measured from the floor to the aluminum extrusion here is 39 inches. And then the total height measured from the floor to the top of the spindle there is 63 inches, roughly. So that gives you a little bit of the dimensions for how big this thing is if you're going to buy it. I'm in a 2-car garage. I would say this is probably the perfect size for a 2-car garage. Having a full 4x8 CNC, it's going to take a lot of space, so I think this is a really good size for a small production shop like mine in a 2-car garage. So the spindle on this is a 3 horsepower spindle. It is water cooled. Having the water pump does allow the spindle to remain cooler, and you can run longer operations on this. The speed goes up to 24,000 RPMs, and it's adjusted manually. Controller they use is this Rich Auto controller here. It's pretty, I would say that these controllers aren't the best in terms of their user interface. I wish that some of these CNC companies can create something that's a little bit more user-friendly, whether it be, you know, using the controllers on a computer that you tethered it to, or you're, you know, having some kind of better layout for these buttons. So in order for you to access some of the menus, you have to like click 2 buttons at the same time. It's just really confusing. But if you look through the manual, everything is there for you to kind of understand what buttons you need to press to get to the right settings and menus and whatever. So that is the controller here. The weight on this machine, if you did check out the assembly video, I did have to use an engine hoist to get the top onto the base because I was doing it myself. But if you had like 5 friends who are able to carry this, you probably can get it done a lot quicker than I did. It took me about maybe 30 minutes to get this thing up in the hoist, center it, and then place it back onto the base. So it is a very heavy machine, but when it's sitting there, it's definitely very stable. I'm not getting any movement or racking whenever I'm running the machine, so that is very good. You don't want the machine to move at all when you're running your operations, or you want very little movement as possible, because those tiny movements does affect the accuracy that you get from the cuts. And the reason why you're buying this machine, or you're buying a machine like this, is for that accuracy. So we'll get into that a little bit later. When I purchased this, I had to purchase the dust boot separately. We'll talk a little bit about dust collection here in a moment. And also I bought the LED strips that you see kind of lighting the surface of the bed here. That's pretty much the overview of the technical side of the machine. If you want to find the full details, you can check out Axiom's website for that. So let's go into the reason why I purchased this machine. Before this machine, I used the Shapeoko XXL version, which is a 33 by 33 bed size. Again, this is the 24 by 48 on the Axiom. So from the Shapeoko, and I know that I'm kind of comparing apples and oranges, but essentially when you're buying a CNC, they do exactly the same thing. But if you're talking about just doing woodworking, all the CNCs out there, they're going to cut the exact same material. They're going to be able to cut plywood, whatever wood that you put on, walnut, oak, whatever, they're going to be able to cut it. So the differences in the Shapeoko is that it did not have a spindle motor. It was actually powered by a router. You actually ran your operations using a router. A router is not going to be as reliable and as stable long-term as a spindle will be, and a spindle will generally be more powerful than a router. You're able to run things a lot quicker and a lot faster on a spindle compared to a router. And also the Shapeoko was a kit. This is a turnkey solution. It comes already assembled, and for me, that was one of the reasons why I went with this machine over some of the other ones out there. Something like Avid or CNC Router Parts, which was the previous name, those are kit solutions. I didn't want a kit solution because I just don't want to tinker. If you are the tinkering type, you might be able to save a lot of money buying a kit because you have to assemble it yourself. And the accuracy of the machine will really depend on how well you assembled it. With the Shapeoko, when I assembled the gantry, it wasn't accurate because I might have tightened a bolt too much, whatever. I had to tinker with it a little bit. It ended up taking me about a week to get this machine up and running where I felt like it was accurate, but at the same time, as I was using the machine, the accuracy was it really wasn't up to my standard, because with the CNC, I am using it for production, and I'm trying to get accurate, repeatable parts every single time for all of my pieces. Especially when I'm doing engravings where I have a logo that I want to be centered every single time. I wasn't able to get that level of accuracy. I would have to always adjust it on my Shapeoko. And that is because it is belt driven, and sometimes the belt could come loose and you have to retighten it. Sometimes you might break a belt and you have to replace those belts or those bearings. So those are some things that I didn't really like about the Shapeoko. I'm not saying that the Shapeoko is a bad machine. It is a very good machine. I still recommend the Shapeoko. If you're doing, very small parts, if you're doing one-off kind of engravings, you're not, pushing the limits of your router, the Shapeoko is a very, very good machine. And it's priced really reasonably for anybody to get into the CNC market. They offer, a smaller size. I forget the size that they offer, but it's a very compact, portable thing where you can just put, a cutting board. If you're doing carvings or inlays on a cutting board, that machine is really great, and it's, I think well under $1,200 for it. So I'm not saying this to say anything bad about Shapeoko. I really love the Shapeoko. I would not have upgraded my Shapeoko if I did not move into this shop. So when I moved into my new house, I saw the opportunity to get a bigger machine that I was able to do some more intricate and creative stuff with. So that's the reason why I decided to upgrade from the Shapeoko. Nothing's bad with the Shapeoko if you want to go that route. One thing that I do like about the Shapeoko that the Axiom doesn't have is the auto bit setter. So with the Shapeoko's bit setter, what it does is instead of creating multiple files on the program, you can create essentially one file with all of your toolpaths in it with the different bits that you're going to use. And as you're running your toolpath on the CNC, the program will actually stop the CNC so you can change your bit. And then when you change your bit, it'll automatically go to the bit setter, figure out the new length of your bit, and then it will go back to cutting the next toolpath without, loading up a new file. So that's one of the convenient things that the Shapeoko has over the Axiom. On my Axiom, I would have to generate individual files and save that to my USB, plug it into the controller here. So once I run the first toolpath, the machine would stop. I would have to change the bit, reprobe for my Z by using the puck, and then load the file for it to run again. So you're skipping like 2 steps, it's not a big issue. But the reason why you're buying a CNC is for that full automation. Now, whether that is a big issue for you or not, that's something that I see as a plus for the Shapeoko at the Shapeoko price, under a machine that is under $2,000. You also have that benefit there. I don't know if they'll ever come out with a bit setter for the Axiom, but it's definitely a really nice thing to have. It definitely increases the efficiency as well as the convenience. You're going to still have to change your bits. With the bit setter, it just automatically sets the depth for you without having to manually telling it to probe or manually going back to set your new program or set your new toolpath. So another difference is the Axiom is running on ball and screw motors. It is very accurate, which I absolutely love about this machine. The Shapeoko does run on V-belts, so it's pretty much a belt that you tension and you make sure that it's nice and tensioned so that the bearings won't slip on the V-belt. There's some issues there. After long periods of usage, the tensions on those belts can give way and you have to retension them, or the belts would snap. or also the bearings, the wheel bearings on those would break as well. So there is a little bit of a maintenance issue with the Shapeoko. But with the Axiom, as long as you're keeping the rails nice and clean here, you're gonna have no issues. Just re-oil it once a year or whatever the recommended thing is. I actually haven't even oiled this. I just made sure that it's nice and clean, and I haven't had any issues with the gantry or any of the parts for the motor. That's another thing when it comes to buying a very expensive CNC compared to the more entry level, which is that accuracy. What I noticed on my Shapeoko is whenever I send the Shapeoko back to the previous 0 point, it's not always on the exact 0 point from my previous run. So if I'm trying to batch out a lot of logos that are supposed to be centered on my coaster or supposed to be off of the bottom right side of my coasters, it's not always going to be in that location. That's one thing that I noticed that was always off. I would always have to go back and move things around, adjust things just ever so slightly. With the Axiom here, when I tell it to go to the previous point, it goes to the previous point, like it is dead on. And the cool thing about this is I can set multiple origins based off of what my clamping situation is like. And Jay Bates, he did a really good overview on it. He did this grid system on his wasteboard where he sets multiple points, and that's something that's super cool that the Axiom has. I'll link to his video in the little icon up here, but that's something that's a really cool convenient factor that the Axiom has, where you can set the different origin points based off of your workpiece, and it'll go to that origin point every single time. Like, it's accurate, it's dead on. The reason why you're purchasing these super high-end machines is for that accuracy. Again, like I said before, will the Shapeoko do the same cuts as my CNC, my Axiom? It would do the exact same cuts, no problem. But what you're buying is you're buying into the reliability, you're buying into the accuracy, you're buying into the amount of maintenance that is required. And the higher-end machines, you're not going to have to do a lot of maintenance and replacing parts. The lower end machines, you're probably going to have to replace those parts. And of course, it's up to how often you're running your machines as well. This machine, sometimes I run it 8 hours a day to batch out my trays. My Shapeoko, I'll probably running maybe 3 to 5 hours a day, especially on a router. It's very taxing on a router to run it a full day, especially the routers that fit onto the mounts for your Shapeoko. Also, I don't trust myself stepping away from the lower end type of beginner machines. With this, I know that I can probably set the machine. And again, you should never ever walk away like for hours at a time when your CNC is running. It could lead to fires because somewhere in the G code, it could have whacked out and it could plunge your router into the workpiece and just leave it spinning, leave the bit spinning in that one place and cause a fire. So you don't want to leave your machines hours on end. You don't want to leave it in the morning and go out to a job site visit or meet with a client or whatever. If you're running your CNC machine, you kind of want to be within the proximity. This Axiom here, I'll leave the machine running and then I can go work on something else in the shop and I'm not too worried about it. With Shapeoko, I never really had the issue where something whacked out, but it did stall on me a few times and I had to kind of stay within range for me to stop the machine. This did stall on me because I pushed it to the limit. I was testing how quickly I can rough out all my materials using a certain bit, and it did stall out on me, so I was there to stop it. But I would say, with Shapeoko, I probably had to babysit it a little bit more than I do with this machine here. So in terms of accuracy, in terms of cut capacity, cut quality, you're going to get more of that with a more high-end machine compared to a lower entry-level machine. When it comes to the cut quality, whether it be a Shapeoko, an Axiom, or more the expensive one, like your Cam Masters, your Avids, your Lagunas, it really comes down to how you set your parameters. The things you have to really consider is what materials are you cutting, what are the speeds and feeds, and what is the bit that you're using. When you know those factors, you can really get good quality cuts based off of those settings. Is it possible to get really good cuts on a Shapeoko? Yes, but you really have to fine tune everything. You have to make sure that your gantries are square. You have to make sure your spindle is trimmed. You have to make sure that your speeds and feeds are accurate. But with this, with the Axiom, I know that my gantry is squared. I know that my spindle is trimmed. So I'm not going to get any mill marks, even when I accurately tune my speeds and feeds. There's a lot more, again, going back to the tinkering, there's a lot more tinkering with the lower end machines. With this machine, you can kind of get it spot on a little bit quicker. And it really ends up being the speeds and feed as your factor of error. If you're noticing some mill marks, you're probably going to look at your speeds and feed, not at the actual machine. In terms of cut quality, I feel like you're getting a lot more cut quality on this machine, a lot more accuracy in terms of repeatability. With this spindle here, you're able to use 1/2 inch shank bits. The router on my Shapeoko, it was limited to only a 1/4 inch bits. You can run things a little bit harder and a little bit quicker on the Axiom. So that's one of the benefits as well. Moving on to the dust collection. The thing about CNC machines is that it creates a lot of dust. So you're gonna wanna buy a dust boot, no matter if it's third party or whatever. Definitely a dust boot is a must for me in terms of dust collection. You don't want to sit there with a hose as your machine's moving to collect the dust because it's going to get everywhere. So for sure, buy a dust boot. I think is a requirement if you're owning a machine like this. The dust collection on this, I wouldn't say it's the best. Because the dust boot on the Axiom travels with the Z axis, you're not really getting a consistent seal around the dust boot. And sometimes the bristles on here gets in the way of the cutter. I had some instances where I placed an 1.5 inch cutter head on this to rough out a lot of my material, and the actual bristle got stuck in the cutter head. The bristles stopped the machine from cutting, and you can notice here it kind of cut away at the bristles as well. So that's one thing that I feel it could be an upgrade with the dust collection on the Axiom. Having the dust boot travel independently of the actual spindle is very beneficial because you're creating a constant seal around the workpiece, and you can just set the dust boot on your work surface and it'll collect the chips really well. In terms of like the fine dust, with CNCs you don't want to create fine dust. That means you're running your bit a little bit too fast and it's creating this fine powder. You want chips, you don't want dust. So with the dust, if there is any dust, it picks this up really well. But in terms of the actual chips, it definitely sends it flying a few times depending on how much material you're trying to remove from your workpiece. So dust collection, I'm gonna say there's room for improvement here. The actual magnet that holds this thing in place, it's not really strong. There are times where it does fall off. A few people on the forum says you really have to adjust the magnet so that it touches each other. I mean, I've adjusted a few times and sometimes it does still fall off. So I feel like with the dust collection, there is some room for improvement. The dust boot that I purchased from a third party on my Shapeoko, at that time, I don't think Shapeoko had a solution for dust collection. It's been a while, so I'm not sure, but I did buy mine from a third party and that thing was really amazing. It pretty much left no dust at all, no matter what I was cutting. It pretty much collects almost like 90% of the dust. That was because I was able to set the actual shoe and the bristle onto my workpiece, and that created a nice seal. No matter how far up or down the Z-axis traveled, the dust boot was always on my workpiece. And that is the key for these machines. You want the dust collection to happen right where you're cutting. You don't want any gaps in between your bristle or in between your shoe and the workpiece. So you want to make sure that there's a nice seal that happens right where you're cutting. So that's one thing that was a positive for the Shapeoko. And I would just use a shop vac too. The Shapeoko just connects to the shop vac and it was perfectly fine. So long as your shop vac was empty and it's not clogged, it was really good. This one here is connected to my 4-inch dust hose here, and it runs to the Grizzly that I have in the back. That is a 3 horsepower Grizzly dust collector, and this is still, spitting out chips. I did do some tests in terms of velocity that I'm getting on my dust collection here. It is around 4,000 linear foot per minute, which is the rate that you need for moving chips up vertically. I do have enough velocity for this system here. The CFM that I'm getting here at this dust shoe is about 450 CFM. 400 to 450, that is pretty good for what this machine needs. But the reason why, again, the reason why it's spitting out chips is it's not giving me a good enough seal to really optimize the amount of CAFM that is given at the point. Another thing that is kind of a gripe is I don't know why I can't set my spindle speed on my program. I had to set the spindle speed manually on the computer box. It's not a big issue, but sometimes I do forget to change my spindle speeds. I am more aware of what I need to do now after using it for months and months and months. But sometimes, it's just nice to be able to automate it on the software. If you're not familiar with, changing your spindle speeds, sometimes you might break your bits. And I did run across that issue early on using this machine. So that's one thing that, I wish they would change, allow the user to automatically adjust the spindle speed on the software. And I'm pretty sure there's some engineering reasons behind that that I'm probably not smart enough to understand. And going back to the software, till this day, there is no post-processor for Fusion 360 and Axiom. I don't get it. I don't know why there seems to be with Autodesk, which is the parent company that creates Fusion 360, they haven't created a post-processor, and I don't know why Axiom hasn't created a post-processor for their own machine so that we can use a good software, because Fusion is a very good software for CNC work. It's pretty streamlined. Everything's there. You can model, you can do your tool paths there. You don't need any other software. So there are some post-processors out there that you can go out and download. Another woodworker who is he's so knowledgeable on the Axiom and CNC work, his name is Chris. He's over at the Tinker Workshop. I'll leave a link in the description below. He worked on a post-processor from Fusion to Axiom. It definitely got me up and running, because when I first purchased this, and I downloaded the post-processor, I believe, on Autodesk or Axiom's, I don't know exactly where I got that post-processor, the feed rate was very slow and I couldn't do anything to adjust it on my software. So I reached out to the forums, and Chris reached out and he was able to send me a post-processor that definitely got me up and running. I did feel like the speed rate on that initial post-processor that he sent me, it was still a little bit slow, and then he recently sent me another one that got the speed a little bit quicker, and I feel like it's almost there. The thing now is I don't think that Axiom is reading the speeds that I'm setting on my Fusion program. I would set something as slow as 24 inch per minute, and it would cut the exact same rate as 75 inch per minute. So there's no real change in the speed rate. So again, that's one of the gripes that I have. The Axiom works really well with VCarb, from what my understanding is. I don't use VCarb because VCarb is really great. And this is going off a tangent, I'm sorry guys, but VCarb is really great for doing inlay work. They really do a great job doing inlay work, but in terms of modeling 3Ds and creating, really intricate detailed models, I don't really think it's there. Fusion 360 allows you to do really cool stuff really quick. So that's why I chose to go with Fusion 360 over VCarve. But Fusion 360 is horrible at doing inlays. So there's a trade-off there. If you're doing more inlays, VCarve is probably where you want to go. If you're doing really basic stuff, I'm not saying that you can't do intricate stuff with their Aspire. I haven't worked with Aspire yet, but I know from Fusion 360, you can do some really amazing modeling on there, and you could get things down to, very fine details. So these big companies, I think they can, kind of get together and figure it out, because Axiom is a really good CNC for the prosumers, and Fusion 360 is an amazing modeling software. So it's a shame that there's nothing out there that can kind of streamline the process. That's where it is right now. So hopefully in the future, things will be different. So that's pretty much the overview of kind of my review after using it for almost a year now, and also comparing it a little bit to the Shapeoko. Who do I think this machine is for? This is not an entry-level machine, of course. It's very expensive, especially for hobby woodworker types. If you are going to use a CNC pretty much on the weekends, you're doing small orders, where you're just doing engravings, or maybe you're trying to do a design for some epoxy infill, or you're just wanting to do some inlay work. Honestly, I don't think you should be buying this machine. You're better off using the Shapeoko, or at this point in time, Onefinity just came out with their CNC, which is really, really competitive in terms of pricing. And also it's ball and screw driven, just like this one here. And also there's the X-Carve, which is similar to the Shapeoko in terms of pricing and in terms of capacity. CNCs are becoming more available to everybody, to hobbyists, to prosumers, to full-time woodworkers, to big cabinet shops. And they're really reasonably priced now. If you have a budget for maybe maximum $2,000, definitely look at Shapeoko and the Onefinity. They do have different models and they vary in different price ranges, but if you're just a hobbyist, weekend woodworker, definitely look into that. If you're more of a production type, if you're trying to batch out a lot of products in a short amount of time, consider an Axiom, because one, the repeatability is great, and two, just the amount of time you could spend running this motor. I've been running this 8 hours a day, sometimes for many days, and it's been a workhorse. With these products, and if you're doing more production, just consider that it is an investment, right? To give you some kind of idea, within 6 months, I've already paid off this machine. It definitely is a good investment if you're doing more production. You're able to get your return a lot quicker compared to, if you're a hobbyist trying to buy this machine, you're not going to look at a return anytime soon. And also you're getting a lot more repeatability with the machine here. If you're a cabinet builder, you probably don't want to buy this machine. You want to buy the 4x8 machine, which, Laguna has a really good 4x8 machine out there. Cam Master has really good machines out there as well. If you're looking for more cabinet production, and definitely a lot of cabinet shops are doing that, I would recommend the bigger 4x8, not this machine here. But that's a different, conversation. I recommend this for, if you're doing templates. If you're selling templates for other woodworkers, this is really great. You can put so long as you're fitting within the cut capacity of your machine, you can do a full 2x4, plywood, you cut out the templates, and you can sell that really quickly. So if you definitely need the accuracy, the repeatability, that's who I recommend this machine to. Would I buy this again? It's really hard to say, because I believe that a CNC should be as automated as possible. That's the reason why you're kind of purchasing it as well. You're trying to get, more production, more efficiency. The Axiom does cut it for me. The one thing that I would say Axiom, and it's probably an engineering thing that they can't do, is an auto tool changer. If Axiom can get an auto tool changer at this price, they would really own the market. What the auto tool changer does is, instead of changing out your bits every single time and rerunning your tool path, you can set your tool path in one file, and within that file, you can tell which bit is needed. You have different mounts, and each of these mounts would have its own bit. The CNC would know which bit to change out automatically. That just takes it up to another efficiency level. Not having to change out the tools, not having to change out the bits, reprobing, whatever, that is going to take efficiency up another notch. At that time, when I purchased the machine, there wasn't a machine out there that had an auto tool changer for a reasonable price. So I was looking at maybe $20,000 just for a machine that had an auto tool changer. I couldn't justify the price, so I went with this. With Laguna coming out with their Smart Series, they have an auto tool changer for maybe a couple of $1,000s more than this. If I had the budget for it, I would honestly go with a CNC that had the auto tool changer. You're saving a lot more time. If you can just set the machine, let it go, let it run its thing, and you don't have to worry about it, you can do something else. I mean, that's definitely a value that I would spend money in. So knowing what I know now, with the decreasing cost of machines with auto tool changer, if I were to get into the CNC market for production, I would try to invest in that auto tool changer. That's just my opinion. But you're going to pay a premium for that. So you're going to pay probably another $5,000 just for that. So you have to really weigh out what your values are. And to me, my value is efficiency and time. So for me, I would save up a little bit more and buy the machine that has the auto tool changing capabilities. That's just me. I still think this is a great machine. I don't have any reason for me to upgrade this machine anytime soon. I'm going to still be using this machine. It's been a workhorse. I've been able to batch out all my trays, do whatever I need on this machine. I love this machine. It's great. It works perfectly fine for what I need right now. So if I do, build another shop, get another bigger shop, then I might consider upgrading this machine. So that's my honest review. That's my honest take on CNCs. Again, I did purchase this with my money. Axiom does not sponsor me in any kind of way. So this is just my honest review and my honest recommendation based off of kind of using this machine as production for one and wanting something that's more efficient for the shop. So if you do have any questions, leave them in the comment down below and I will get to them as quickly as I can. Things that I did not cover that you want to know more about in terms of the software side or in terms of the hardware side, leave them in the comments down below. So if you did like this video, hit the thumbs up, share this video, make sure you comment on whether or not I'm right, whether or not my evaluation is correct. Let me know what you guys think about, if you do have an Axiom, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys like it? Do you guys think that my opinions were valid in terms of the auto tool changers, whatever? And if you have a Shapeoko, tell me why you love your Shapeoko. So that is it for this video. I hope that you are able to make a more educated decision whenever you're purchasing a CNC machine. So until next time, this is Bao with Design Craft Workshop. See you.